sometimes I look back at what I've done and could I have been a CHRO earlier in my career? Probably, but I would have sacrificed things that I didn't want to sacrifice, right? I would have moved. I would have worked, hours and weekends and travel and all those things that, although I did a lot of that, it would have been probably more than I felt was the best thing for me.
Hey, Nicole, what do you get when a former corporate CEO and a do-gooding executive walk into a recording studio?
Well, Erin, nothing, because the two of us are usually on my couch or Zoom, because wine.
You get a podcast created for Gen X women who are bought into the corporate world, but fed up with the BS.
I know. It's how to thrive the 9 to 5 or 6 or 7.
It's career therapy. It's comedy. It's definitely full-on authenticity. Basically, we give you tangible strategies to rise in your career without compromising everything else.
Because work doesn't have to suck.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Because Work Doesn't Have to Suck podcast, where we give authentic advice and humor to help you contemplate, contend with, and catapult your career. And this is Erin. If you can't tell the voices, I'm one of the co-hosts. I'm Nicole's better half sometimes. And I'm a former corporate CEO turned speaker, edutainer, and author. And today is an interview episode where I'm actually sitting down with Julie Ann Alvarado-Dubek, who is the CHRO of Banner Health. If you don't know Banner is about a 50,000 person organization in the healthcare space, healthcare delivery, health plan. And Julie Ann is the head of all those people. And not only is she the head of all those people, she's super authentic. And here's what I loved about the episode and why I really want you to stick around. There were some key things that came out. First of all, in this episode, you're going to learn about the key thing that she didn't know how to do and quite frankly made her feel uncomfortable and what she did instead. You're also going to hear how she created, this is unbelievable, roughly she said about 80% of her jobs, meaning there was no position. She actually created it along the way. You'll also hear what I loved, what I would call a groundbreaking tip on how to give feedback to your bad boss. Yeah, tough. I mean, it's not like they're asking for this feedback, but she has a really creative way on how you bring this feedback to them. She also will talk about how she handled their return to work policy, which is obviously hot in the news right now. And as a CHRO, this was the biggest thing. And not only did she come in with data, she studied this in her courses at university, but she also has data on the success of what they've done, which is not the same as everybody else. And so really good information, like hardcore facts, and also how she did that. And then the last thing that I think really should make you listen is she talks about the one biggest mistake that she sees people making in her career. And I have to agree. And so you don't want to miss that. So if any of this hits the spot, you want to learn both from somebody who herself has made it to the C-suite using authenticity, but also somebody that has this bird's eye view that most people don't have of what creates success in the people that she leads throughout the organization. This is definitely the episode for you. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Julie Ann. I'm so glad we sort of refound each other in a way because we met about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Was it?
It might have been 6. I don't know. COVID years threw me all off. So
we actually didn't meet in 2019 because I feel like 2019 is like the year everything happened. Do you ever feel like that when you're trying to?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You're like, it must have happened. But maybe you tell how we met because
I would love that.
Interesting your perspective.
So I went to this Deloitte Women in Healthcare Leader Conference. And as much as I am relatively extroverted and love to be with people, I do not like, you and I have talked about this, right? I don't like the whole networking thing. It makes me really uncomfortable and I feel awkward. Like I listened to the podcast the other day about awkwardness. I'm like, yes, this is it. So I feel like you and I found each other, kind of like moth to a flame, found each other, sat by each other, and immediately it felt like I knew you for years. And I will have to say that walking away from that conference, I don't remember a thing that I learned other than how much I enjoyed getting to know you. And my favorite part was we felt it in the room. And then on the break, when we went out and there was the person checking, doing the picture with everybody's aura. Do you remember that?
Mhm. Oh, yes.
They did the picture and everybody had red, blue, whatever it was. And you and I were just both bright yellow. And that's when we knew, oh, okay, yes, we were meant to be.
We are so meant to be.
Yeah. I just hate that we're on the opposite sides of the nation from each other. So.
I know. Well, and so not that we totally lost touch, but right, lives are busy. We're connected on LinkedIn. Thank God for LinkedIn. And then about, I don't know, 6 months or so ago, I think we sort of came back into each other's lives. I think you saw a post I did on authenticity. And what I love is how quickly, even though we obviously had this connection there, what I realized very quickly in talking with you and having you part of our group is that you epitomize sort of authenticity and leadership and how it's propelled you. So I want to actually go back though. You are a CHRO of a major healthcare organization, a provider, health plan. But was that always your goal to be a corporate executive in general? Like was that little Julie Ann dream?
No, and I always want to do HR. So I am a little strange that way because a lot of people stumble into HR. And I wanted to do it since I was relatively young and had a relative who did it and thought, oh, that's so interesting. But the leadership thing really it just sort of morphed and became, a part of what I was doing. But it was never really a goal. So if you were to have talked to me even 15 years ago and said, oh, you're going to be a CHRO, I would say, I don't think so. Right. It really wasn't something that I had my eyes set on and then I was going to get there. But I think that journey has been, I think it's been that much more rewarding for me because I wasn't constantly looking way out there saying, what's it going to take to get to that point? I was just kind of going on the ride to see, hey, what's interesting? Where can I contribute? Where can I really find some passion in what I'm doing and make a difference? And eventually it led there. And I'm very fortunate that it led there, but it certainly wasn't the end goal.
Yeah. Can you remember the first time that, because I know sort of the end story, right? You're this super authentic leader and person, but many of us don't start out that way where we're trying to sort of, prove ourselves and work hard and say the right words. Was there an influence or maybe a time where you're like, wait a minute, I could do this my own way. I could do it more authentically.
I think early on, I was really fortunate that I worked with some pretty dynamic female leaders. And I remember one of the first leaders I had when I became a manager, she gave me a book called Hardball for Women. Have you ever seen that book?
What's it called?
Hardball for Women. It's really old, but I'll tell you what, I remember reading this book and it had tips in it, things that I swear have stuck with me forever, Erin, like, don't let somebody just talk over you if you have something important to say. And chances are if you are really working hard and doing what you're doing, you're potentially going to be called bossy, especially female. And if I had a dime for every time I was called bossy. So it's, I don't think there was one particular situation that happened, but I have always found that I'm with my team. I think it's so important to create that trust and that, be vulnerable. So I am definitely, I'm the one who, if I'm having a bad day, I'll talk about it. People on the team I work with, they've seen me cry. They've seen me laugh. They've, had me say, yeah, I can't attend this meeting because of something like my tortoise died. Right. So like, these are things that, way back when I think that it wasn't necessarily the norm. Like you kind of showed up to work and you had that face. I didn't know how to do that. And so I just didn't. And now I feel like it's so fabulous because people coming into the workplace are understanding that bringing yourself is the best way to work. It is the way that people are going to maximize their opportunities and their productivity and their happiness. So, it wasn't that way back when I first started working 30 plus years ago. There weren't very many women. And we wore suits. We wore, like you put on this facade, but it always felt really uncomfortable for me. So the minute I move away from that, I did pretty rapidly.
Yeah. I think I read in your bio too that way back in 1997, which had been an early career, I think we're about the same age, that you had a moment of like guts where tell us about like the job share that you created,
That was, that was definitely something that was, not expected. So I had my first kid. He was 2, got pregnant with my second one. And you know what it's like, right? It is just, such a hard time in your life to think you want to work, because I would be a terrible stay-at-home mom. I know this about myself. Like I need to have those different challenges, but I wanted to be a good mom and I wanted to be there for them. And so one of my friends at work was in the exact same boat. And both of us had some experience doing this particular type of work. And so they said, hey, we want one of you to take this new job that's really important. And so she and I sort of bonded together at, age whatever it was, 25, and said, you know what, we'll both take the job, to which that completely blew their mind at a tech company back in the 90s to say, what does that even mean? We said, we want to job share. And we kind of wrote out a nerdy little paper saying, this is what it would look like. This is how it work. This is how we'd make it work. And they, I think out of desperation, because they really needed somebody that knew this job to do it. So they gave us the job and we job shared for 6 years. And by the end, we were leading a team of 40 people, started up a big service center and systems and all kinds of things. And it was the smartest thing I ever did in my career. It really was, Erin. It, it allowed me to have that balance as much as you humanly possibly can do that, because I know that's not exactly something that anybody can really pinpoint how to do it, but it sure helped.
Yeah. It's, what I have to say, it's you 50% ruled.
I did.
50% ruled your first job. Let's talk about that for a little bit. And then I want to go back to home life stuff, because I think there's some interesting things there. But so you've been part of this group that I formed that's is sort of advising, my advisory group for my next book called The 50% Rule. And when I first sent out the sample chapters, I got some feedback back, but yours was just so passionate, I guess, and poignant. And it was around this concept, the 50% rule basically says both when you're taking in advice, only take about half of it and then curate the other half with things you've learned, but also stuck in there, not yet written, but really important, was like, as a leader, as a mentor, as a coach, as an instructor, you also have to tell people, hey, make sure you 50% rule this. And you said something in your email, I wrote it down. You said, I'm experiencing, you were newer into the CHR role. And you said, I'm experiencing people hanging on my every word and randomly express thoughts as a do this, don't do that. It's weird and exhausting and likely frustrating for them too. So tell us more about like this feeling of, kind of having a little bit more of this almighty, I don't want to say power, but influence, and how that doesn't always feel right for you.
Yeah, it really does. The 50% rule, I have been talking about it with my colleagues, with my friends, with the team that I have, to explain to them. And it's a two-way street. It is definitely helping me to be able to express that I may have an opinion, but my opinion doesn't necessarily need to outweigh somebody else's just because of the title I happen to have. And so the other day, one of the team members that I work with gave me the best compliment ever. He and I were out at a facility visiting with their C-suite and, they're doing presentations, et cetera. And we left and he looked at me and he said, you know what? And I said, what? And he said, your title is intimidating, but you're not.
Mm.
And I said, that's the best compliment I think I've ever had in the workplace, right? I mean, it's because it really is, it's still me. I've worked at the same place for 12 years and had the great opportunity to grow and develop and move, if you will, up in the organization. But it's still me, and I'm still contributing what I think that I can contribute as an individual. It just so happens my job title encompasses different things. So I do get, I am still trying to navigate that, Erin, in terms of how do we make sure that because you have a title, because you happen to sit somewhere, your voice shouldn't necessarily be louder than other people's. But, it really is more of take that information in and help people to keep things moving forward, but not be overpowering. So the 50% rule for me has been already helpful in trying to explain that to people. Like take in what you're getting, but then put your spin on it and make sure that you're not trying to regurgitate something that somebody else said. And I will tell you, I wish I had the 50% rule 20 years ago because, I, much like many people probably listening to the podcast, I was a perfectionist, and oftentimes I'd read an article or I'd hear something and I'd think, okay, this is what you need to do. And then you try to apply it at 100% or even 80. And it's exhausting because it's not who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you feel like a failure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure so many people are listening. We do several episodes with leaders that have sort of had success, especially without selling out, without sacrifice, right? With authenticity. But in particular, I want to spend a little time. You are a CHRO. A lot of people listening, right, are very influenced by their own CHRO. And quite frankly, there's a lot of bad ones out there, right? That sort of don't walk the walk, right? They're supposed to be in charge of creating this great, place for humans and don't always do that. What do you think it is about your leadership style? What do you maybe do differently than maybe other CHROs without, sort of bashing your peers? Have you been told that you do things differently? Obviously not as intimidating, but I'm just curious. What's your style?
It's funny. I'm actually reading a book right now, Lessons in Chemistry. I don't have you read this book?
Mm-mm.
And it's in the book, there is a HR professional and she's just awful. And every time I turn a page and it's about her, I just start cringing because I think it is the reputation that HR often has is kind of not being value added or maybe getting involved in things that, aren't helpful. I've always really tried to focus on, hey, we're just all a part of a team driving, the business. And in the case of working in healthcare, we're really trying to drive the purpose of helping our communities out there, which is really important to me personally. So what we do, we bring the expertise, but it's similar to the way finance brings expertise on, hey, here's how the numbers work and here's what we need to do. And HR similarly can do that with regard to, here's how we can best influence the culture. Here's how we can help people to really show up and be their best selves, make people feel included. And oftentimes, it requires some pushback on people who maybe have preconceived ideas about the way things should work. Great example of that is the whole battle about coming back to the office or working from home. And it's fascinating to listen to people and their viewpoint on that. And if you just peel that onion a little bit, usually there's something to that has nothing to do with the work or the productivity. It's something personal that they have. And so, I'd like to think that sometimes I can help people to just step back and almost hold up that mirror of truth to say, okay, why is this really happening and what's the best thing we can do?
Yeah. Have you ever, so one of the things I think is hardest about your job is sort of serving two masters. There's sort of, you're serving the CEO or the C-suite, right? The board, sort of the people, quote unquote, your peers and above. And then you're serving, the common everyday employee. Is there a time where despite the current and the pressure pulling you one way towards, what the CEO wanted, that you sort of bucked that and had the courage to go in a different direction for the betterment of everybody else?
I think if I think about a recent experience, it probably is this topic of do you work from home? Do you come back to the office, et cetera? And, that debate started right when I was coming into this new job that I have.
Mm.
And so it also happened to be something I was studying in school. And so I was very passionate about what does this mean? What's the best way for this to work? And thinking about the 50% rule, usually the answer is hybrid, if possible, may very well be the right answer in the long run to this topic. But there were some very senior leaders who started to make the comments about it's time to come back to the office. It's time for people to come back. And so I did have to pull together, some background information and kind of evidence-based information to demonstrate why in the current workforce that we have, give credit to people who for the past 2 years have been working so hard and doing a great job and they were not in the office. And giving people option is one of the best retention tools possible out there, is making sure people like to have choice. So I really sort of, if you will, armed myself with that information and had some great opportunities to talk with senior leaders who did have a concern about this, because they were kind of at all different levels. There are some people who thought, no need to go back, and some people who were just really adamant it's happening. So allowing to have a conversation with them and really making sure I listened and heard where they were coming from, so that they at least knew that I wasn't just coming and saying you will do this or you won't do that, but rather let's have an agreement on how this will work. And I will say, so far, it's been going really well. There are more people coming to the office, but we have not put out a mandate, and our retention and our turnover is better than it's been in years. And while you can't completely attribute to one thing, I think it helps, right? I think it helps people feel like they have the opportunity to. You just posted this the other day, and I loved it, that you're on LinkedIn about people have the time to take their kid to the dentist or the baseball game or whatever. You are buying so much in your relationship and quite honestly, kind of a personal loyalty by allowing people to be people, right? Like life happens, and it happens at 2:30 in the afternoon, or it happens at 6:30 at night. It's not necessarily conducive to a 8 to 5 work day. And if we can help that to not be the case, why wouldn't we?
Yeah. What did you find? So I know you had commented and then said you studied this. I'm like, oh my gosh, give us the dirt, Julie Ann. What maybe in your studies, obviously there's a lot of data and information, but what are one or two things that we'd be surprised by that you just happen to be able to be privy to, given the deep dive you were doing at school on this?
So one thing that I thought was really fascinating as we really focus on diversity and inclusion is that there have been several studies that have shown that diverse people, diverse in all kinds of different ways, be it, it could be, ethnicity, or it could be just, I'm an introvert, or, like the way that I process thinking, et cetera. Time after time, people were saying that remote work, where everybody is remote, not where some people are in the office that other people are trying their best to dial in. That's usually a little bit clunky. But when it's fully remote, those people who maybe are a little bit different than the norm, that sit in the conference room, et cetera, feel like they have more of a voice and more of an opportunity to participate, because it feels a little bit more like an even playing field. When all the people are on the screen together and you can raise your hand using the tool.
Yeah.
That type of thing, it sounds minor, but for some people that really does make a difference to allow them to form their thoughts, raise their hand, and be able to speak up. Whereas in that conference room, when there's the 3 people in there who are dominating the conversation, they're never going to get their word in edgewise. And eventually they just sort of give up. And then we miss out on the great thoughts and the great information that could have been coming from that person. So that's something that I learned and I really, really appreciate. because, everybody's different. I don't have a problem with speaking up in meetings, but some people do. And those people have great ideas that we may or may not ever even hear.
Yeah. Well, that's really good. What was your biggest challenge? Like, what was it? Was there a time in your career where you kind of hit a crossroads, whether it was, in the micro or maybe in the macro, that was probably your biggest hurdle you had to get over? And what did that look like and feel like, and how did you come overcome it?
I think assuming that there is one road and one journey for your career is very dangerous, right? And so I think you and I both are so lucky that for a variety of reasons, our journeys sort of zigged and zagged and landed in places where we feel really good about them. But I think it's important for people to recognize that, that next job you have, it may not even exist right now. And in fact, when I look back at my career, I was sharing with you when you first asked me if I'd be on the podcast, and I thought, I have such a boring life. I don't have anything to share, because it on paper, my trajectory from work looks very linear. But the reality is 80+% of the time, the job I had was not a job that existed before. And so there were things that I did where I started to work in certain areas and then recognize, oh, this is value added and I'm getting something out of this and the company's getting something out of this. And then next thing you know, it morphed into being a real job. And then, that's happened.
Oh, slow down on that, girlfriend. Slow down on that, girlfriend. Because people are like, it just morphed. Like, please tell me it didn't just morph. Like, there's a formula, there's something that they should be doing that can help them create that job that hasn't existed, the job that they feel like they could really serve.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't really, at the time, I wasn't really recognizing it. And as I look back, I realized, okay, there was something there. And I really do think it's, one thing I've always done is, kind of kept an open mind on what I'm involved with. So even if I am in a job title that's very specific to a specific area, if there was a project such as like maybe we're acquiring a company, or maybe, maybe there's something going on, I would raise my hand and say, I'd like to be involved with that. And would get myself involved. And then time after time, those things, you meet people, and in a very authentic way though, right? You meet people because we need to work together to make this happen, not because you're schmoozing or, just trying to network. It really is, it's purposeful. And when it's purposeful, things tend to form and happen. And then keeping an open mind about the next job I have might not be the next highest level. I think that's a trap a lot of people fall into. And I see it a lot with HR where it's, I have my eye on, I need to be a director. I need to be a senior director next. When the reality is your best route for your personal growth and your personal, really satisfaction, it might be just lateral. And when I came to my current company, I actually took a step backwards. I was a vice president at another company and came here as a senior director. But I knew this is something I want to do. This is a big company with lots of opportunity. I should be able to navigate my way through this. And as long as I'm doing things that I'm interested in and I'm excited about, it doesn't really matter, right? The title thing, I think people get really hung up on that. And I think that's a mistake.
Nicole, what are you doing over there? I'm finally getting up off the virtual couch and making some career moves, just like you told me. And I came across your authenticity playbook.
Yeah, I forgot to tell you about it. This authenticity playbook I've had for a long time, and it's actually the most downloaded resource I have. It's basically 10 quote unquote plays, authenticity plays that you can make at work to stand out and get promoted and use authenticity as your strategy, your secret weapon.
I'm really going to take this to heart because despite all the sports references, I know that it's full of your awesome and your authenticity. And it probably is going to help me go far or go home or go big or whatever the sports reference is.
All the things. So listeners, if you also want the authenticity playbook, you can go to beauthenticinc.com/playbook and you can make career moves like Nicole.
Whoop, whoop, Heisman!
What about bad leadership? I'm just going to start going down some of these wonderful HR topics so we get your sort of inside look at, so many people, right? The thing that's making them miserable, that's pushed them out, that's right, is that they're working for a crappy leader. Let's be honest.
Yep.
And I think one of the big questions, no matter what level they are in the organization, they could even be at a senior level, or they could be, a frontline, individual contributor, is why does senior leadership not see it? And what can I do, right, to toggle that line between not wanting to be the one that's like, hey, Julie Ann, like I'm reporting, a crafty leader.
Yeah.
But at the same time, not just succumbing to it and saying, okay, well, I'm going to have to lead. Do you have any advice for people that are kind of stuck for a leader that they're not quite sure people, the right people understand? And what could they do, to get through that situation?
So, I mean, I have some suggestions. I think it is something that, we all have experienced. And, some of my best lessons about authenticity and being a leader now stem from having really crummy leader sometime in my career, somebody who, was nitpicky or, whatever it might be, things that just didn't set well with me. Those things stick with me, and I try so hard not to behave in that way. So I guess I'll start with, as a leader. So if you're a leader and you have a team of people, trust is everything, right? So if you can develop trust and relationships with one another, then it just allows for that open communication for a team member to be able to tell you, hey, when you do this or you say this, it makes me feel less than, or it makes me feel like I can't open up or I can't participate. So developing that trust and treating people as individuals is something that I really learned. So for years as an HR person, we always think about fair and, like, hey, what's fair? Be consistent with
average,
because you need to be. Yeah. The problem with that is if you're authentic and you're really trying to lead in a trusting environment, well, you're leading people who are all completely different human beings. So I have learned over the years, my relationship with the people who directly report to me, I have a close relationship with all 7 of them. It's a completely different relationship, each one of them. And so I think that if you are a leader, understanding that it's okay to be different. I mean, we need to give people equal opportunities, et cetera. And so it's not favoritism, but it is, we need to accommodate and cater to what each other needs in a relationship, just like with a friendship, just like with a marriage, right? It's a similar concept. If you're talking about the leader that you have, so, if my leader is not the most authentic or not approachable, et cetera, the best advice I can give is have some really straight talk conversations with that person, but in a way that's not threatening and not telling them, I don't care, I don't like you as a person, but rather when this happens, give real examples. When this happens, this is how that made me feel and respond. And I'd like to understand how we can work better together so that I can contribute the most I can possible. I mean, if, in the end, your leader wants your organization to perform. And in doing that, if you can position the conversation in a way that says that here's how I would best show up and perform, and here's what would help if you would behave this way, or if you would maybe, if something's concerning to you, talk to me offline versus in the meeting, for instance, or whatever that thing is that's really not working, have that discussion with them, but try to make it be, not feel accusatory, because no matter, even if your leader can be really tough to work with, they're still a person, and it's still, it's hard when somebody comes at you. But if you come together to say, this is something that I think would benefit both of us, personally and professionally. Sometimes people see it. They don't always see it, right? I mean, I've certainly had leaders that, I've done this with them, and they still have continued to behave in that way. And I've a couple of times have made the decision to leave because of that. So I think there you do hit that point of you've got to assess the situation for yourself, but at least give them a chance.
Well, and so many people I think are thinking, well, that sounds great, but logistically, I never had the open window, right? Like we have a one-on-one, and they never ask for feedback or performance review time. It's a one-way street. But I like what you said is, if you can put it in context of performance, or I'm juggling, I've got 4 projects and I don't think I can handle them all, but here's what would help. You could, right? Because most leaders aren't good about like, what's 1 or 2 things I could do better this week, to help you out. So is that kind of like, let's talk more specifically. When do you have those conversations? Because it sounds great in theory, but everybody's running at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Like, have you had an experience where you had to position this in a time where nobody was like, your boss wasn't actually asking you for this kind of feedback?
Yes. I mean, I think that for me, at least, it has been easier to kind of anchor it to a scenario, because if you go in and it's kind of open ended to just in essence kind of a I'm
airing of the grievances.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so you have the Festivus full and you're airing the grievances, then that can just create that defensiveness. So that would be the one thing I'd say is it for me, at least it works better if there is a work related item you can anchor it to, and then share it from a context of here's how it would allow us to be better, right? Because so that it really does feel like it's beneficial to the in this case to the leader. It's beneficial for them to actually consider changing their approach, et cetera. And the other thing I'd say is, if you make yourself useful, for lack of a better word, right? If you make yourself useful to your leader, in other words, you're helping them to do whatever it is that's important to them and help them to show up, then the chances are, as you have this conversation with them about here's how I would like to ask that maybe you ask for me for advice or you show up a little differently, et cetera. I think it's going to end up being, kind of a better opportunity for them to hear you out, because in the end, there's a little bit of there's a positive for them that, I don't mean to say that there's a selfish intent, but there is a little bit, right? It's like this helps you, this helps us both. Help me, help you, right?
Right. Yeah, I love that. Like for example, I know you're getting a lot of pressure from your boss to move XYZ project. Like recognizing their pain because they're human. And here are some ways I think I can help. One thing that would, if you could do this a little bit different, like it's almost a little bit Trojan horsey.
A little bit. Yeah.
But not passive aggressive.
Right. Yeah. No, you need to be real. And at the same time, I think sometimes people do lose sight of the fact that just because you hit it on the head, when your boss is also getting a ton of pressure, right? And on whatever it might be. And so to at least kind of acknowledge that versus it being just about, hey, when you're doing this and it makes me feel this way, have a little bit of acknowledgement of, to your point, I know you're feeling a lot of pressure about this. I'd love to be able to help with this. Here's something that would help both of us in that way. I think that mutual journey and finding ways to get a connection can definitely benefit.
Yeah, I love that. Diversity. Okay. No BS answers. We're doing a lot around diversity, but what's the one thing that Julie Ann can see that like we need to cut through all the clutter and we need to do better in terms of improving our diversity numbers in corporate America?
I really do think it has to do with recognizing that diversity is multifaceted, and so many people just try to pigeonhole it into, okay, we need to promote so many people of color, or we need to, recognize, that okay, this is an LGBTQ, it's Pride Month or whatever. It's like it needs to not be a targeted, like this is the month we recognize this or that, and that whole kind of token recognition. But then the rest of the year, we're like, yeah, okay, whatever, life goes on. And to me, inclusion is the key. because inclusion in my mind means that you're including everybody regardless of what you're bringing or what you're passionate about, what your beliefs are, etc. We want you to feel a sense of belonging as you come to the workplace and bring yourself, right? This is where all the things that you do, Erin, I think are just so important for us, that bringing your authentic self, bringing your background, what you've experienced, and like insecurities that you might have, etc. All those things help us to really be human and deliver. And I just worry sometimes with DE&I that people are just trying to pigeonhole it into these, if we just do these couple things and, hey, look at the representation of, like kind of what I can see on the surface. And that's the other thing that really kind of bothers me with when people talk about DE&I, or sometimes I'll get somebody that complains to me about, hey, I saw this, this training class and there were this many people in this picture and I didn't see enough diversity. And my response to them was, how would you know the diversity of all of those people? Right? Because the fact of the matter is there were people in that picture who were from other countries. There were people in there who, had, different orientation. There were all different things in there. You couldn't tell that from that picture. And in my mind, that myopic view of, you look like this and that's how I'm going to judge diversity is, it's really short-sighted.
Yeah. What's one thing that either you've done like as a best practice that's different, that's not going through the motions, or that as individuals listening can just wake up and do differently with that sort of philosophy in mind?
No, I think I honestly, I've been stealing shamelessly from you on the authenticity element. I think that's, when we do, we have webinars and we have all kinds of, we have team member resource groups where I work with that cover DE&I. And when I have the opportunity to speak or be a panelist or whatever it might be, I really do dig into that. I dig into people showing up as their authentic selves and not feeling that concern about, okay, if I show this particular side of me, I will be thought less of, or I won't be able to move ahead, or I'm not like everybody else. To me, that is the key. When I give speeches to new leaders or new employees, I talk about trust and empathy, credibility and authenticity as that's kind of my DEI speech, quite honestly, is, all those things coming together. If you really do it and you mean it, then, that's how everybody can really show up and feel comfortable that they can succeed no matter who they are. So I think that's my spin on it. It's not to say that we don't, that I don't think it's important to ensure we recognize, different organizations, different groups. But the fact of the matter is, if we truly were accepting everybody for who they were, their authentic selves show up, warts and all, we're demonstrating the best thing we can demonstrate with regard to diversity and inclusion, because everybody's going to be there, right? Everybody's showing up, and it's, and we look and act in a variety of ways and somehow make that work, and it will take things forward.
I love it. You heard it here first, people. Authenticity is the trump card. My words, not hers, but I think that's what
Yeah.
Trump card. So just had a couple more questions. You're in a new phase of your life. Your sons are grown, and your husband, I do follow your posts about your husband's sexy, cool profession. He's in the video world, right? And production and stuff, but it wasn't always that way. Tell us a little bit about how you guys, sort of have juggled the different, maybe less than traditional roles, and tell me and brag on him what he's up to now that you guys are in this phase.
He's pretty great. So we got married really young, and he he studied broadcast journalism and really wanted to get into television, which is not easy to do. So we made the decision. I had the corporate job out of college. We made the decision. You need to go pursue this, and so we did. So he worked hard and eventually became a television reporter for years. And when we hit our kids were kind of like preteens, my job was getting bigger and bigger, and that whole balance that, we all talk about. And I, talked to several members of our group about this, especially when your kids are young, it is so hard every single day. And so we just hit a point of deciding, he was kind of done with working on Christmas and doing all those things in that job. And so he quit his job, started up his own media company, where he, in essence, he freelances for NBC, but he mainly does video production and teaches people how to do sound bites and do things on TV, et cetera. So he literally just started up his own boutique business, and he was the guy with the kids, right? So when their kids went to high school, the teachers all knew him. He was the guy at the basketball games, et cetera. And once in a while, with the stereotypes you have, it was hard. Like I'd show up to a game and you could just tell people, like, who's that? It doesn't feel great. And at the same time, I would just step back and remind myself, you know what, as long as one of us is there for the kids, it shouldn't really matter which one of us it is. And so there are certainly times, to this day, the kids are the kids. They're 27 and 30. But they still, they come to me for certain things, and him, just like everybody else's kids do. And, but it was at the time very non-traditional. We definitely had a lot of people, including close family members, say, this doesn't, what are you doing? When are you going to get a real job, to him? And then, I traveled for my job some. And so people were just, kind of giving me the side eye about that. And the reality is, it's what worked for us. And again, it was, in looking back, it was kind of our example of being true to ourselves and what really worked for us. And, we made time for each other, and for the kids. And now, they're both functioning adults. One's in Austin, one's in Denver. And I think that, they were better for it. I think I'm a better mom because I didn't, just say, okay, you know what, I need to stop working, because that's what a lot of other people were doing at that time. And he, kind of went that non-traditional route too, and it ended up being perfect for him. And he's, his business is continuing to this day and doing great.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love the post. Rich is his name, right?
Yeah.
I remember. Yeah. I follow all the Rich posts and, the bragging you do on him and his cool business. So I love it. I have one last question, but before we do that, if people want to connect with you anyway, what's the best way to do that?
Probably through LinkedIn would be the best way. I'm enjoying LinkedIn more and more lately. I feel like there's been a little bit more authentic information there versus just I'm looking for a job or I got a job.
Yeah.
LinkedIn would be great. I'd love to hear from people.
Yeah. And I'm sure you're very popular because you have a popular title, right? CHRO. So, but it's good to know that you're actually enjoying it there. I know some people that are in sort of corporate giving, HR, sometimes they're like, it's so hard because I get targeted a lot. But
yeah, I get a lot of vendor things, which,
sure.
After a while it's like, okay, I don't need that. But, media, I've met several people through my connection with you. Had a great conversation with one of our little partners just on Friday. So yeah,
makes me so happy.
It's fun. I think, I really do believe in, what you're doing is so important, Erin. And I hope that, in my role, it's a little bit different, but I'm doing something similar in that it's my time to give back and help people understand, like their journey can be very different. And it still can end up getting to the right place. And, sometimes I look back at what I've done and could I have been a CHRO earlier in my career? Probably, but I would have sacrificed things that I didn't want to sacrifice, right? I would have moved. I would have worked, hours and weekends and travel and all those things that, although I did a lot of that, it would have been probably more than I felt was the best thing for me. And in the end, now I'm a little bit older going into this job, but I do think maybe I'm a little bit wiser too, about I don't sweat the small stuff, and, mistakes I see as opportunities pretty quickly and things like that. But I think, if I were doing this job 10 or 15 years ago, I probably would not be quite as zen about the whole thing.
Yes. I love that. I just finished Ted Lasso last night. Have you
I
watched it?
did. I just finished it too last night.
And talk about a Zen leader.
Right?
And I the same thing. I watched that. I'm like, gosh, I wish I would have, not that it would have transformed me, but I wish I would have had that example 15 years ago of somebody who can just let things roll off, not get mad at people who've crossed their back, not, worry about ego.
Oh my gosh. No, I have a Be a Goldfish t-shirt because that was the thing. I mean, you think about how much time we've wasted on rehashing something that happened, that day or that week, to think, oh my gosh, what could I have done differently, et cetera. And the fact is, we're all doing the best we can with what we have and the information we have. And so Be a Goldfish is a fantastic phrase. I think everybody should take that one to heart.
Yeah. Yeah. That show, I know a lot of people still don't have Apple, haven't watched it, is save on your Starbucks, get the Apple membership, watch the show. It's such a great example.
Get the week free subscription and just
jam it. It's only 3 seasons. Best show ever for all the feels, all the reasons. So my last question is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received? I know this is really hard, but from a mentor or somebody, or kind of like a mantra that you have going on other than the 50% rule, which I'm so glad is helpful for you, that you would pass on to our listeners?
I think it would be always remember that your thoughts and your voice matter. So don't miss the opportunity to share. I think so often we step back and we think to ourselves, oh, this isn't useful, or this is stupid, or everybody else is thinking the same thing, so I'm not going to say it. And the fact of the matter is, oftentimes that's not the case. And if it is the case, it still can drive some great thoughts and conversations. So don't be afraid to speak up. If you happen to work someplace where where there are people who have very loud voices, make sure that you speak up and you're heard, and, politely, if somebody speaks over you, then politely ask that you let them, let you finish your thought, because your thoughts matter. And I think that's probably one of the biggest gifts I have. And, is that I was taught that a long time ago, and it makes a difference. And again, I don't think anybody's going to fault you for engaging.
I love it. So good. Well, thank you again, dear, for coming on, for reigniting our friendship, if you will, for being an authenticity advocate and beacon, for you participating so authentically, to reuse the word, and with the 50% rule group, and for recognizing it's your time to give back. And the biggest gift is your voice. It is your reflection. It is figuring out what was some of the formula that made your success, and either doing more of that or sharing that with others. So this was a great, I think, way to do that. We're very appreciative of having you on.
Oh, well, I am so honored. And, when I listen to your other podcasts and think to myself, oh my gosh, it's such amazing company. I love the podcast. I can't wait for us to keep moving on the book. It's so exciting. And again, I hear time and time again, we're all already using it. So you got to keep it going, sister, because it's already in play.
I know. I gotta write the damn thing before it writes itself, and without my royalties. So
that's right.
All right, dear. Thank you.
Friends, do you have other friends? Are they adults? Are they out in the world somewhere? Please, please, please invite them to listen to our podcast.
Okay, dude, you sound like a late night, 2 a.m. infomercial. Basically, what she's saying is our love language is ratings, reviews, and sharing the podcast. We'd love nothing more than if you would do that.